Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Marie Ashway. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Mainline, and always so much fun for me to come on and host these productions for our customers. Really enjoy the role and enjoy the fact that you keep coming back to hear our experts talk about various technologies and applications of those technologies for our mainframe installations. So thanks for being here a little bit early. We will get started with the program in another 2 minutes. So make yourselves comfy, grab your latte, your coffee, your iced coffee, or whatever morning beverage or afternoon beverage you most desire. And we'll get rolling here in a couple of minutes. Guess there's some weather we're watching. I'm currently in the northeast of the country, up in Connecticut for the summer, and there's a little storm called Lee that is making its way up the East Coast, and kind of keeping our eye on that. Right now, it looks like it's going to land somewhere up near Halifax. So if anybody here is on from the Canadian Eastern Seaboard, certainly have you in mind, but I am really happy that it's not landing where I am, although we're probably going to get a little bit of winds, some winds and some outer bands, maybe some rain. So we'll see how the next few days roll out, but it looks like it's going to be a weekend event here. So I have to figure out some things to do other than like go to the beach. It's probably not going to be a good beach weekend. Or a good fishing weekend, or really any outdoor kind of activity. So could be, I don't know, could be a hurricane party. We'll have to see how things go. So if any of you that are, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What's the strength of it right now?
You know, I want to say it's probably a 3 at this point, maybe a 4.
Ooh.
It's going to get fairly large in strength, but by the time it gets up into the northeast part of the U.S. and into Canada, I think it's going to be down to maybe like a 2. The water, of course, is a little bit colder and will tend to slow it down a little bit when it gets up this way. So we shall see. So, all right, it is 12 o'clock, and I've got a bunch of people on here, so let me officially start the program and say welcome, hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Marie Ashway. I'm the Director of Marketing at Mainline, and thrilled to be hosting this session today with our speaker, Jeff Broderick, who is a Z Systems architect who works primarily on new workloads for the System Z. So we're going to be talking about application modernization. Jeff was on with us last year and did something also in the lines of application modernization. But since then, there have been some new tooling, some new things to talk about. So for those of you that are following us and have been on with us before, some of the stuff might be a little familiar, but again, there's going to be some new tooling and some new technologies that Jeff will be talking about. So, as I always do, while we first get going, let me just go through a couple of housekeeping items here. So number one, just so you all are aware, this is being recorded. If you have any objections with being on a session that's being recorded, now would be your time to leave, although please stay. We'd love to have you stick around for the next 45 minutes to an hour. Number two, you'll notice that you are muted and you cannot come off mute. So the best way to speak to us is through your chat window. So please use your chat window as often as you feel so inclined, even if it's just to say hello or tell me if the hurricane is anywhere in your neck of the woods. But go ahead and chat me up at any point in time. And Todd, who is here with me, is in the background with me here. He and I will monitor the chats and take your questions and all of that wonderful stuff. At the end, there will be a quick 1-question survey, and we hope that you'll stick around for the very end and just hit the button when it says, survey, right? And just answer 1 question for us. And that helps us for ongoing sessions. We're going to be doing some polling during this. That's your time to participate, not just active listening, right? But your time and turn to really participate with answering some questions. And part of those polls are going to be what I call the get to know the audience game that we'll do in the beginning. And the other part of those polls are going to be a, hey, win a rocket kit game. So we have some space questions, some space trivia questions. For those of you that have been following this series all year, this year has been about space and space exploration. So we'll continue with that, and there'll be some space trivia questions, and you have a chance to win an ST's rocket kit. I've given out a lot of them this year already, and people have been very excited about receiving them. So hopefully you'll be able to win one of those rocket kits today. And also, if you attend 3 out of 5 of these technology sessions throughout the year, you will automatically receive a mainline gift pack, which contains some fun logoed things. We've given away hats, coffee mugs, things of that nature. So it will be a fun gift pack that we will send your way for attending 3 out of 5 of these sessions. So yes, I do track who is on, so I can do that. All right, let's get started with the part of this session that's the get to know the audience. So this is where you get to participate with the first question that we have. So first question is your organization currently deploying APIs? So let's see where you all are with this. Is your organization currently deploying APIs? So I've got some of you saying yes. And if you don't know, that's okay. That's okay. Then just check that maybe box, not sure. That's fine. Okay, I've got a mixture now. I've got maybe half of you that are deploying, and the other half either you're not or you're not sure. So that's super. Thank you for that. All right, our next question in the get to know your audience game. Does your app dev group leverage any of the newer DevOps tooling? And you might not know this either, depending on if you are in DevOps or not in DevOps. And even if you are in DevOps, you might not know. So let's see. Some of you are investigating, and that's probably why you're on here today as well. And many of you are not sure. That's fine. Okay, we'll close that one down. Thank you for that. And we've got one more question. This is a little bit different of an angle, but how is your organization addressing cyber resiliency concerns? And this is a pick all that apply. So you can pick one or all 5. Multi-factor authentication. Are you doing disk mirroring? Implementing some air gap backups? Deploying some intrusion detection solutions? Or are you considering or deploying Cyber Vault? When I say Cyber Vault, I don't mean the IBM product Cyber Vault. I mean the industry technology of Cyber Vault. And maybe you don't know, and that's okay too. Okay, some of you are doing disk mirroring in the DR environment. I would probably suggest, and I could be wrong, but many of you are probably doing MFA. I know we do it for all, like our Outlook, and for anything that I go to do anymore. If I try to go into our CRM system or anything, it's all MFA. So I suspect many of you are doing MFA. Anybody doing any air-gapped backups? Okay, so I've got some intrusion detection, I've got some disk mirroring, and I've got some MFAs out there. Great, thank you so much. Okay, so now that we know a little bit more about you, which helps Jeff when he presents his materials, it is time for us to turn this over to Jeff. So again, let me introduce Jeff Broderick. I call Jeff the man behind the curtain because he has like some kind of a thing going on with his webcam and is not able to use it. So we call him the man behind the curtain. But Jeff is there, and we'll be taking it from here. And I'll pop back in with some of our space polls as we go through. So Jeff, it is all yours.
All right, thank you. So you can see my screen right now?
Yes, we can.
All right, so let's get going. So the topic of this again, defying the laws of application gravity by modernizing, essentially. And we're going to touch on several different topics. So the agenda here is one of the number one things, messages. You got to stay current so you don't get buried in what I call old applications. Exploit newer languages and techniques. Those three individual topics underneath that. Explore new development tooling. Implement modern data management techniques. And then we'll wrap up with questions. But really, there's those three core pillars: new languages, techniques, new development tooling, and modern data management type processes. So we're going to hit on that. From the aspect of application gravity, what I'm really hitting on here is don't let the weight of your existing applications prevent your organization from becoming efficient or more efficient. Oftentimes, an application development group gets kind of buried underneath the weight of the existing core applications that they have to support. And it becomes just this, let's just keep this going, whatever we got to do to keep it up and going. And they may not step back and take a solid look at what could we do to make this better? What could we do to open this application up, and so forth. And, from my standpoint, there's several different kind of rules or laws that tend to take place here that's influencing this. And in particular, every developer really wants to be involved with building new applications. Very few really want to be in the maintenance model. I know when I was a developer, I always wanted to do new stuff. I wanted to write new code. I didn't want to have to go in and just do bug fixes or minor enhancements and so forth. I really wanted new development. And so in many cases, that new development takes a priority over innovative approaches to the current stuff. So existing applications, they are the lifeblood of an organization, but they rarely see the introduction of innovative methods and newer techniques. But they could often benefit the most, and on the same vein of that, the organization, the IT department could benefit the most by taking these major core apps and often rejuvenating them. So leveraging existing business logic is significantly more cost effective than trying to rewrite it or writing brand new logic. Plus, you don't know what may have gotten lost if you try to rewrite it. That's just a known fact out there. When we do enhancements in application development tooling, those can really provide great efficiencies and reduce training requirements for developers, regardless of the target platform for the application. So where I'm going at with this is standardized tooling across your IT department can dramatically improve the flexibility of assigning different developers to different projects, regardless of whether it's deploying to a Linux world, Windows world, or to a Z environment, etc. And so by providing that common capability, it really improves the overall ability to, I don't want to use the word exploit, but to truly leverage the existing developer talent you already have on staff. Not only that, it dramatically increases the ability to write application code and deploy it to the target platform that makes the most sense for that code. Many times, code can be developed, or newer application code is being developed, and by default, we're going to throw it on a Windows server, or we're going to throw it on a Linux server. But in reality, it really is ancillary to the existing DB2 on ZOS perhaps data, and it may have made more sense to put it closer to the data and run it within, say, a secure service container or a Linux environment on the same platform, et cetera. So just kind of be open-minded about all of that. There are a lot of advantages. I always want to really kind of come back to the developing a centralized relational database strategy can dramatically improve data security, application integrations, and it can reduce your processing cycles, enhance your backup, recovery, and your cyber resiliency. The more copies and variations of databases and data structures that you have across different servers and platforms dramatically increases your risk. It dramatically complicates your ability to have an adequate disaster recovery type approach. And in today's world, we need to start thinking very heavily about cyber resiliency, because the more exposure that data has, the more at risk it is for a cyber attack. So assessing the existing data is accessing the existing data is dramatically more efficient and secure than cloning, replicating, or copying the data to other locations. And indeed, there are a lot of techniques that can be used to do that. There's no reason to clone an existing database to another platform just because an app needs to access that same data. Why not do API-oriented development and have that distributed application accessing the actual data that's record of source, okay? It just makes a lot of sense and also reduces your exposure. So avoiding application gravity can slow your organization down. You should innovatively look at the entire application development ecosystem. And so this kind of sets the stage for an organization really should have a strategic organizational plan for their application development. They need to step back and look at what are your future needs. Where do you see your IT needs going in the future? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, what are your current weaknesses as it relates to that IT environment? What types of applications or systems do you think you need to replace, or what needs to take place? In other words, maybe this application is very slow performing and we no longer have a skill set to support it. Well, it's time to step back and put that on the big map. Establish a plan, whatever it is, and you don't always have to do this big bang theory. Sometimes you can deploy upgrades and enhancements to systems while continuing with the overall integration strategy. But create the plan and then work the plan. Application modernization is an ongoing process. It is not a one and done. So every organization should continue to research, evaluate, pilot various tools, processes, etc., to determine what is in their future and what's the best fit for their future. There are a lot of different tooling options out there, but every organization has different needs. So you want to assess that and look at it very closely. Application modernization also incorporates hardening of the organization for cyber resilience. When I talk hardening of it, I'm talking the actual data, managing how data is accessed, managing how many entry points there are to that data, and creating an environment where you are inherently more cyber resilient. So the very first bullet was stay current. This is one of these I hit all of my customers with when I talk to them, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure there are some of you out there that still are not all the way on COBOL 6 on your Z platform. And I really like to point out, COBOL 4.2 has been unsupported for over a year plus. And that was announced, way before that. And the current COBOL version 6.4 came out a year ago. And honestly, I'm certain that you have upgraded your hardware in this period of time. And the reality is that if you do not stay current with your languages that you're using on your Z platform, you're not taking advantage of the advances in the technology within the hardware that you're buying or leasing. It's really important. COBOL version 6 has some significant performance advantages over COBOL 4, especially if you are on a Z15 or 16 platform. There were major changes in the instruction sets embedded on the chips, and you really need to take advantage of it. It doesn't have to be done big bang. You can do some core modules at one time, or as you're doing the maintenance process. what I find is customers will typically always keep their Windows and distributed systems updated with current supported versions of things like the Windows operating system or different drivers and so forth within that environment. But so why aren't we keeping our COBOL applications, which typically are the bread and butter of an organization? Why aren't we keeping those current? And again, I really want to stress there are significant advantages of moving to COBOL 6 if you're not already there. You do need to do some testing, but I want to point out, I've had customers reporting to me anywhere from 20 to 30% performance improvement on the same program being recompiled under version 6. And again, it's because packed decimal instructions were built into the chips. So all of that processing overhead is now eliminated if you go to COBOL 6, and that will reduce your MLC costs also. So just real quick there, your hardware lifecycle history. I throw this out here because I think it's a really, if you download the presentation, I think it's a really great piece of information for you to have and hang on to. The current compilers always optimize the executables for the hardware instruction sets for that specific chipset model, okay? So again, depending upon where you are, it's very important to be current with that. That's why there are changes in the operating system, why there are changes in CICS and DB2 subsystems, and that's because those subsystems are exploiting the new hardware instruction sets to get you better performance. And so therefore, take advantage of that with your applications too. From exploiting new languages.
So Jeff, I think I'm going to jump in here if you don't mind.
You are supposed to jump in there. I'm sorry.
Yes. I'm going to jump back in here with a fun poll. All right, so this is one of our space polls that will apply toward the rocket kit giveaway. So, all right, let's launch this one. All right, why was India's moon landing? Oh, my other word is here. It's supposed to say significant. So significant. Why was India's moon landing so significant? Was it significant because the crew consisted of 4 women, or they were the 3rd country to land on the moon, or it was an uncrewed landing, or they were the first country to land at the southern lunar pole? What was it that made it so significant? Let's see. Got about half of you weighing in. No Googling. Okay. I'm going to close this down. It looks like you all got that question right. I'm impressed. They were the first country to land at the southern lunar pole. It actually also was an uncrewed landing, but that's not necessarily so significant because there have been 3 other countries that also have done uncrewed landing. I think 3. No, there were 4 in total. So there were 2 other countries that did uncrewed. Of course, the United States was a crewed landing. So anyway, that was the answer. So thank you, and Jeff, we'll pass it back to you.
All right. Thanks, Marie. So I'd like to talk about exploiting new languages. COBOL does continue as the predominant language for ZOS development, but the Achilles heel of COBOL is that, it runs and runs and runs and runs with very little maintenance or very little changes being made. And, the COBOL compiler versions are a prime example of that, the version 4.2 stuff's still running, even though there are really strong reasons, financially compelling reasons to move to the latest compiler. But there have been multiple enhancements in the COBOL compiler itself, including things like OO, object-oriented COBOL, the ability to do JSON, which really implements the ability for RESTful APIs interfaces, XML parsing built into it, etc., that improve its ability to continue to be leveraged for modern development and integrations with other modern languages. So I kind of like to point out, just like a tardigrade, COBOL's been unbelievably, extremely resilient, and it continues to survive after nearly 60 years. So anyhow, feel free to go out to the IBM website and look at all the latest functional enhancements and so forth that came out with version 6 and more importantly 6.4. All right. But again, we should be also looking at exploiting new languages. Let's be honest, many developers out of college today are not necessarily strong COBOL developers, and they maybe don't really want to do COBOL. They want to do Java or Python or R or C or C++ or those types of languages. And indeed, those are all viable languages that can be developed and deployed in a ZOS environment. And some key things here too is, for those of you that are up on Z hardware technology, several of these alternative languages are indeed zip eligible, which means when they execute, they're executing off of the primary central processor units, which really means it does not, that translates into monthly license charge savings. So you don't pay extra because, to execute them specifically in your monthly license charges, because they are what we call zip eligible and can be offloaded from the core processors. So again, several languages, Java, I have read where Python also was now eligible for zips. It wasn't originally, but it is. Rocket software carries several of these as a port that you can acquire or license specifically for development on System Z. And again, then you can write Java and choose to deploy it. Do you want to do it on System Z? Do you want to do it in Windows, or do you want to do it Linux or whatever? So it gives your development group flexibility on writing the languages and the application code, and flexibility on where it could be deployed. As far as new techniques, API enablement to me is absolutely a key strategic direction that every organization needs to be researching, implementing, and deploying. The language environment, or what we call LE within ZOS, has enabled cross-language calls and invocations. So that's been around for decades, and it also provides common runtime environments. It's very, very easy if you're using some other tools I'll talk about later, like IBM Developer for System Z, to convert COBOL subroutines into things like web services, and/or which can make them, which an API enables them. There is a product from IBM called ZOS Connect. If you're not familiar with it, I would strongly encourage you to go out to the IBM website and read up on ZOS Connect, because it provides a graphical workbench development environment that allows you to build and create API integrations to existing ZOS subsystems and infrastructure. This can have significant performance advantages and reduce CPU cycles, because it could allow existing distributed applications to eliminate their need to ETL or FTP data off platform. Whereas if you need just a validator record, or you need to read or write a record, you could use ZOS Connect within your application to connect to that database, to that record or whatever, and do a RESTful call and pull the information back that you need, and avoid all of the overhead involved with transferring all of that data to a different data structure, etc., on a different platform where it can be exposed. I'm aware of at least a couple companies where they were ETLing, or extract, transform, and load, which is moving data off their mainframe to a distributed platform that did some minor stuff for them. And that was where their data was exposed, and they experienced a cyber attack. So it is a very real thing, and that keeping your data in a centralized, controlled environment and using things like API calls dramatically improves your cyber resilience, okay? So you should be going to an originating data source and probably not copying your data all over. I'll talk more later. Reuse your code rather than rewrite your code. Again, you can convert existing COBOL subroutines into things like web services or API callable routines, so that core business logic can be shared and called from any platform and anywhere. Secure service containers has been around for several years now, it's beginning to start getting some serious uptick as far as vended applications being built for secure service kits for SSC or ZCX. It was enabled back in the Z14, but again, in the Z15 Plus systems, and now Z16s, it's out there. The ZCX capability is indeed an MLC licensed product, but it's, it enables you to actually run a Linux type Docker environment within the USS world within ZOS. So it provides a new way of running Linux applications within the ZOS ecosystem. So an application developer could construct, and the data center could then operate very popular open source packages, Linux applications, IBM software, third-party software together with ZOS applications and data, all within the ZOS ecosystem, okay? And IBM provides a Linux distribution configured to run the Docker environment, okay? So again, this is a relatively newer technique, but it is certainly gaining steam, and I believe it is something that every organization should be looking at and researching and figuring out how could we do this and how could we benefit from this within the organization. And the fact it's running USS and it's Linux makes it also zip eligible, and it means that those do not impact your monthly license charge software. So customers can build the ZCX applications and deploy them to to a secure service container. It does expand the ecosystem. It provides a big evolutionary method of running Linux on Z, where you don't have to stand up separate IFLs or a Z Linux environment that has to be uniquely supported, okay? Not that saying if you need that, the Z IFLs are also a fantastic way to do it, but you're no longer restricted to that being a hardware investment to begin to leverage Linux within the Z ecosystem. So again, IBM Container Hosting Foundation for ZOS, it's an MLC product. It does have to be licensed. Obviously, there's trials that can be done for that and so forth. There's also for customers that are very much standardizing on the OpenShift platform, there is an alternate version of container hosting for OpenShift. But, they are two offerings. You only need one or the other, but if you are very much targeting OpenShift as a strategy moving forward, then you would probably go that route for your container hosting versus the straight out container hosting foundation.
Hey, Jeff, it's
yeah,
time for me to pop back
right
in
by
again.
you again. I know.
You did.
Darn it.
But I don't let you. I pop in because I can.
You're paying attention.
Because I can. But before we do this next poll, though, let me pose something. So there's been a lot of press lately about Watson X, and one of the use cases has been Watson X being used to convert COBOL to Java.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts about that you want to share?
Well, I'm personally continuing to look into that and research it to just to what extent it really does it. My 40 plus years history in IT and in all sorts of areas of IT says that there are probably some really solid use cases for it, but I'm not sure it's a one size fits all, and I want to understand that much better myself before I personally start recommending it. But if someone is really wanting to trial it or or that type of thing to kind of test it out, I would say, let's go ahead and try it. But I'm not convinced it's a one size fits all, but it probably has some really great use cases.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I've been curious. I've been seeing a lot of it. So a lot of advertisement and such of it, a lot of promotion. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move over now. Again, time for a little poll, space question. So, which planet has the largest ocean? Now, I'm giving you a hint. We might not necessarily be talking about water. So, what planet has the largest ocean, but it is a liquid ocean. It is a liquid ocean, but not necessarily water. If you don't know, just take a guess. Is it Jupiter, Mars, Earth, or Mercury? Largest ocean. Okay, a lot of you are landing on the right answer. Some of you are not, but it's okay. Just take a guess. Okay. Anybody else? All right. I'm going to close it in 3, 2, and 1. So many of you had that answer right. 3/4 of you have the answer right. I'm impressed. The answer is Jupiter. So Jupiter does in fact have water in ice and vapor format, but that's not what makes up its very large ocean. So Jupiter, because of the intense pressure, there are some gases that we normally know as gas format, so hydrogen and helium, but on Jupiter, they're actually liquid because of the high pressure. And there is a massive ocean of liquefied hydrogen and helium on Jupiter. So hopefully if you didn't know that, you know it now. And for those of you that did know it, congratulations, I'm impressed. Okay, Jeff, back to you.
All right, thanks, Marie. So when we talk about exploring new development tooling, you know, that inevitably one of the first places you start is with your development environments today. Yeah, I mean, I started out using iCCF, Xedit, ISPF, and you know, those were the editors of the day, even Pamela Online. And but the reality is that the editor space, the IDE space, has improved dramatically. And there are now true integrated development environments that allow developers graphically and far more easily to have multiple sessions and windows going or perspectives. They can dramatically improve developer productivity, provide for some integrated processes. Really, a graphical developer environment is no longer a luxury. I think it's an essential component, and also to just attract newer developers to work within your IT department. These IDEs can also allow you to easily build web service-enabled components out of existing code, and then that conversely also enables you to do web services and APIs to those. So there are a lot of core advantages here, whereas to perform that work outside in a traditional environment takes a lot more steps and a lot more pieces and parts to do it. There are multiple options that are available. There's IDZ, the IBM Developer for System Z, which has gone through multiple other names in the past, Rational Developer for Z, etc. There's a Topaz product from EMC CompuWare or BMC CompuWare, and there's also VS Code, which is really a kind of a Microsoft shareware type graphical IDE environment, very based on Visual Studio. So there are several options out there, and it really comes down to what makes sense for your organization, but you should seriously be looking at these, exploiting these, and deploying these across your development environments. So most developers today have already been using IDEs to start with, and that's really what they want to use. The other beauty of the IDEs are that you can leverage the same IDE across multiple languages and platforms and build and code as you need in the language you want, and then through other integrations, deploy it as you need to the target platform where it needs to be. Which leads us directly into what's usually what we call a DevOps discussion. So what I really want to point out here is that DevOps is all about process. It is not a specific set of tools, or it's not just about tooling. It's about managing the process around your application development environment, from development all the way through to operational deployment, so that you have a consistent means and methods for managing what a developer works on and how it gets into production through appropriate channels and checks and balances. So many organizations are indeed adopting common tooling across all environments. Again, from a developer standpoint, if I'm using the same tool set, do I really care where I'm deploying this to? You don't. It becomes very seamless and transparent. Many organizations are integrating various tool sets from different vendors to build their DevOps environment. So again, it's not a specific tool or tools. It can be various ones, and you can mix and match and kind of build your own preferred DevOps platform. So what's ideal for one may not be a perfect fit for others. You need to establish an enterprise modernization strategy first, then incorporate your DevOps processes and the tooling when necessary so that you have a truly cohesive solution. So I'm saying you need to be doing APIs, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you need to be doing ZOS Connect because it's a fantastic way of building these API calls. Well, the reality is if that's what you're going to do, you also need to make sure you have DevOps processes to manage your ZOS Connect API calls and migrate those from development to production so that you know what you've got, you know what's out there, and you know that it's a controlled, managed process. Again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and it is not one size fits all. Common tooling that you'll often hear about for DevOps are things like Git. So there is a Git for ZOS, and it takes care of things like code page management when you have to convert character sets from ASCII to EBCDIC, etc. DBB is a tool from IBM for dependency-based build, and it works in the background to create the executables from existing COBOL, assembler, etc. modules and programs. You can also do some scripting in it to do other types of builds as you need. Jenkins is often used as a tool out there for the process management. Ansible and Urban Code. Ansible to recreate an environment when you send it there, or to do certain scripting and operational management of things. Urban Code is commonly used for deployment. So you want to send something to a test environment. You use Urban Code would be built to do that for you, or leverage to do that. Same thing with after approvals, migrating to production. So again, but these can be used across multiple platforms to create a very seamless type environment. And I'm only mentioning these because they're probably some of the more common and popular. But again, you can choose your own. So again, a modern DevOps solution can be implemented leveraging multiple products, even various vendors. And again, I'm talking about the same ones I just mentioned. In particular, IBM ZVTP is a virtual test platform for automated testing and code coverage. That's becoming more and more important to know that we've actually done our testing across, 40% of what this module has, and or we've automated from the prior time so we can speed up the testing we need to do on these modules. Another one I'm pointing out in there is the ADDI, Application Discovery and Delivery Intelligence. Again, that is an IBM tool, but it's really a fantastic method for identifying and performing application analysis, determining dependencies across the board of things like copybooks or where certain fields are leveraged, etc. ADDI can be used for both Z-based applications and distributed applications and help provide a more cohesive view of your enterprise source, your enterprise applications themselves. There's some other tooling out here that certainly are also commonly leveraged or part of this. And again, you don't have to do all of these at any one time. It's more important to get started and have a strategy. So Jira is often used for project and defect tracking. It's a pretty popular tool out there from Atlassian. And I'm not endorsing any one. I'm just saying these are the common and more popular. And again, Jenkins for the process. How do you, this is assigned to somebody, now they know about it, they're aware of it, they go ahead and check that code out from perhaps Git or wherever else. I'm not saying you have to move to Git to have a modern DevOps environment. Several of the existing SCM tools do provide either integrations to Git or similar functionality. So if you've got something already there, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, research it, look at it closely. Does this have the abilities to do the things you want? Because many of those can be integrated with IDZ or with Topaz or with other tooling. So you may be well ahead both on your implementation of a strategy and with cost savings. I want to get into modern data management discussion here real quick. Your mission critical applications are the lifeblood of your business, and that associated data cannot be compromised. You really have to leverage your data for things like decision making, problem solving, strategic understanding, improving processes, and understanding customers. It's your most valuable asset for an organization. And you must make every effort to reduce the risk of that data exposure, cyber theft, intrusions, or ransomware. And I'm going to mention this very quickly. Where I'm located in central Illinois, there was recently a healthcare system that experienced a cyber attack, and it may have been, they've not disclosed it officially, but it sounds like it could have been a ransomware because they were down for like 4 and 5 days, and it's multiple hospitals, which is a real crisis for them. So it is real world, and it happened, and it even can happen in your backyard. And the last thing you want is it happening to your organization. So organizations need to rethink and regain their management over the proliferation and unnecessary duplication and cloning of data across platforms. So I like to say modernized applications demand robust relational database solutions. There are the legacy database structures like IDMS and ADABase, even DSAM. Maybe consider moving or migrating those or converting those over into something that is SQL enabled. IDMS has some options, and I think ADABase too, where you can do SQL against it if you're going that route versus one single relational database platform. You may want to research a product like DVM, the Data Virtualization Manager, which can pull from these different sources. You issue SQL to it, it pulls from these sources and can bring the data together in a very composite view. That's a fantastic way of doing it if you're deeply embedded in some of those legacy database structures. But you should attempt to standardize on a relational database. Maximize your investment, simplify your application integrations, simplify your data access, whether it's SQL or XML, etc., or JSON, whichever. Reduce your overall resource support costs and increase capabilities for analytics. If you are using DB2 on ZOS as your primary repository for your corporate data, you can deploy an IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator and also enable that data in real time for analytics that does not impact in any way, shape, or form your existing transactional systems. So that's almost a presentation into itself. You should simplify your cyber resiliency and database recovery and more easily integrate hybrid cloud applications so that those can then connect to your data of record and not move it all over the place. Again, data is your most valuable asset. Cyber resilience, I'm going to fly through this fairly fast, but you have to be looking at and considering a cyber resilience strategy. Simply recovering from a disaster is no longer enough. You may find that those backups that you created are already compromised if you do not have a solid cyber resilience strategy, okay? A strategy has to include identification, protection, detection, incident response, and recovery from a cyber attack. You need to be able to identify the incursion, detect an unauthorized tampering, and respond and recover the impacted data. Customers need to begin considering what is needed for their business to protect it. I threw a little blurb in here on multi-factor authentication. Yes, like Marie said, we're all used to MFA on all of our distributed applications and browser apps, but how many of you have actually implemented an MFA solution on your TSO, ISPF, or CICS accesses? And in reality, those are your core systems, and we should be deploying MFA across the board on all applications, both distributed and Z. And ZMFA is one of the easier, quicker ways to do it, and I would strongly encourage you to look into that. Again, if you're seeking the latest cyber protection, you should look into IBM Z's Cyber Vault solution. It is both a software and hardware solution, and it provides an air-gapped storage mechanism so that that storage that you are snapshotting and backing up cannot be cyber attacked in the same manner. And then you would detect, scan it, and so forth to determine whether it's been compromised. Again, it's an architectural infrastructure. It leverages software, hardware, and services, etc. It can be single system, multi-system, or multi-site. This is not a trivial thing to go about doing, but it's something that you can begin and put into motion, and over the course of several years, have a fully robust cyber resiliency solution. So the hardware software components, I've listed them there, etc. And feel free, honestly, seriously, go look into it and let us know your thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Marie.
All right, Jeff, thank you. And so before I put the last fun space question up here, I really do want to, though, pose another question to you, Jeff. So you mentioned several different things that people can do to modernize from, getting from COBOL 4 to COBOL 6 as an example. You talked about DB2, you talked about a lot of cyber resilience. Where does somebody start? How do you help a customer that says, hey, I want to look at making my Z implementation more cyber resilient? How do you help, and how does Mainline help?
So in particular, we would bring in some of our very talented and skilled individuals. Normally, a cyber resilience strategy is going to start off with things like and we're going to do a kind of a workshop and identify exactly how you're doing your backups today, where you're doing your offsite storage, whether you are able to do a GDPS, whether you're able to do an actual sysplex environment, and so forth, and then determine what are the next steps to get to a more cyber resilient environment. And like I kind of mentioned, it's not something that you do just overnight. You kind of gear up for it. So you're going to probably need to acquire some storage specifically with safeguarding copy capabilities. And then you're going to implement the storage and start doing your copies and so forth to that are safeguarded. And then you can begin also building out your other, what I'll call resiliency capabilities, whether that includes another sysplex environment, or whether it's just improving processes for forensic analysis and et cetera on that existing data. So we would come in and really want to do a workshop, sit down with you and discuss what your immediate needs are and where you really want to end up and what that time frame may be, and then put together a plan that helps you get there.
Yeah, and that's great stuff, Jeff. I know that you've worked with many of our customers in various ways, right, to help them take the next steps and become more cyber resilient. So please reach out. Reach out to Jeff, to myself. Go on to mainline.com. There's a contact us. You can hit us up there as well. I get all those responses, so please reach out there as well, and we're happy to jump in and help with any of that information. All right, let's launch one last poll here for the Rocket Kit giveaway. I think this is an easy one, so let's see. True or false? There is at least one full moon every calendar month. Is that true or false? One full moon every calendar month. True or false? You probably have to know the length of the moon, the full lunar cycle, how many days that is, to be able to answer this question correctly. Okay, anybody else want to take a guess? Close this down in 3, 2, and 1. All right. Somebody, just as I was closing it down, somebody got in with the right answer. The answer is false. And the reason it's false is because the full lunar cycle is 29 and a half days. So depending on leap year or not leap year, right, February has 28 days. So think about that, 28 days. So what if the previous full moon was January 31st? You could get through all of February without having a full moon. So the answer is false. A little bit of a trick question, but I'm glad somebody sneaked in there at the last minute and got the right answer. Good for you. So I will compile all of your responses, and I will reach out personally to our winners, and I'll get your mailing address, and we'll get the rocket kits off to you hopefully rather soon. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. I use Amazon to get those things out, but I will be in touch relatively soon. So thank you. Jeff, I'm going to turn it back to you to wrap up.
Okay, sounds great. And Marie, I'm going to chime in and say I think that was a trick question.
I thought it was a softball, quite honestly.
So I have a little resource slide here for those of you that want to, the quick way to get out here to look at some different things. I want to point out the COBOL Migration Assistant provides a mechanism to determine the difficulty of migrating certain modules from like COBOL version 4 to 6. So you can take advantage of that, especially if you got a really big module or program that you're concerned about. I always suggest people, if they're going to do the 4 to 6, target your longest running batch modules first, look at those, compile them, and test them pretty thoroughly. There are some specific, as a heads up, there are some specific compiler options that can affect the truncation rounding routines within COBOL version 6. And if you really want to think about it in the real way, is that COBOL version 6 is far more accurate with its packed decimal arithmetic. So in some cases, rounding may or may not result in a slightly different number, but you can reduce or change that, what we call the truncation methods and so forth, so that you don't have any differences. But it's actually more accurate than the version 4 arithmetic functions. But here's some different things. Feel free to use those. And again, I'd like to round up with saying, don't let the weight of your existing applications prevent you from becoming more efficient and trying newer things and trying to improve your overall ability to integrate and improve data access and improve your cyber resilience. So thanks all.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all. I just sent out 2 quick chats, so you have a couple of links. One is to our event page. You can keep up with all of the mainline events that are happening, both virtual as well as in person. And also to let you know that our next Z Technology Series virtual program will be held here October 18th, and that'll be on Quantum Safe with IBM's distinguished engineer, Michael Jordan. So hope to see you all back for that one on October 18th. And if there are any last questions here, please feel free to put them out on the chat. I'll give that a few seconds here to see if anybody has any last things to ask. And if not, please, again, feel free to reach out to myself, to Jeff, or hit us up at mainline.com on the Contact Us. We will always get to you that way. All right. Well, thank you very much. Happy to have you all here. Appreciate your time, and we will talk to you all soon. Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye.